Welcome to the Co-Authoring Chronicles podcast, 2 voices, 1 tale.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast today. I'm Helen Corvis. I'm here with my co-author, Steaphan.
Hello, everybody.
And we are super excited because today we have a returning guest. It is Nathan Lowell, and he has been a writer for more than 40 years. And he first entered the literary world by podcasting his novels. This one quote, which I feel funny saying while you're with us, but from you is, I always had a desire to write fiction. And when I started listening to books on podcasts, I knew I found a medium to tell the stories bottled up in me. He's most famous, I think, for his sci-fi series, The Golden Age of the Solar Clipper, which grew from his longtime fascination with space opera and his own experiences in the United States Coast Guard. Among his degrees, he holds a PhD in educational technology with specializations in distance educational and instructional design. Welcome, Nathan. I'm so happy to see you again. How have you been?
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So, any updates or anything going on with you?
It's been a year.
It's been a year.
It has been a year. It's gone really fast. I'm sort of surprised at how fast the last year has gone, and kind of appalled at how little I have to show for.
I think this may be the human condition. Okay, so when we met last, you actually had what I found to be a really invaluable amount of content to share about marketing. And I think it's definitely for any indie author out there to really get a good grounding. So I thought maybe it'd be good to intro with that. And I especially would recommend everyone to listen to Nathan's first episode with us, where he really broke it down. But what is it that you feel still remains that people should know about marketing, or indie authors should really pay attention to about marketing? And what are maybe the top highlights that you would recommend they know about?
Well, the big one is to understand what marketing really is, and that marketing is not sales and promotion. And what most authors, particularly these days, are concerned with has a bit of the cart before the horse, because they're much more concerned with promotion and sales and promotion, and have not actually done any marketing. So it's not too surprising that they're having trouble finding sales of their books, finding readers for their books, finding any or very much sort of uptake, because they're sort of thrashing around in the dark without understanding what marketing is and how marketing works and how it relates to things like social media, and why advertising on social media is a lot like putting gasoline in your horse. Sure, it's a good fuel, but that's not the right engine.
I love this because I think something you mentioned before, right, when we talk about marketing, is the importance of identifying the audience or knowing what your niche is, which really provides the context, right, for those actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gets back to even, I mean, just this morning there's a conversation going on scribes and makers about marketing strategy. And most people don't understand that what they're talking about is not marketing and is not strategy. So when you don't have the right words, or you don't understand what the thing is that you're talking about, it's not too surprising that it doesn't actually work out very well. So strategy is the overarching theory of what you're going to do. Marketing is how you determine what market you want to participate in and how you want to participate in it. And it involves making pricing decisions, certainly, but it fundamentally is, what are you willing to do and what are you able to do to participate in a particular market segment? If you want to sell something, you have to know where you're going to sell it. You have to know how you're going to sell it. You're going to have to know what you're willing to do and what you are able to bring to the table to make that happen. And while that sounds pretty mechanical, it's really the core of how all of this stuff works. And even if we're, artiste, I find if I want to not be the starving artist in a garret, I have to have some idea of how I'm going to keep myself in paint and canvas. The same is true of writers. Writers have a real significant advantage over graphic artists in that we we don't have to buy paint. We don't have to buy letters. Once we have the alphabet, we got the whole set. We don't need to buy any more.
Well, I have a question for you, Nate. I'm a new author, which I guess I am still, compared to you, Nathan. I'm going to put that hat on right now and ask you, oh, I don't know. I've just been writing. I don't know what my market is. I don't know who I want. How do you figure that out? How do you answer that question for the new author that's just writing?
Well, what do you want to accomplish? If you want to just write, just keep going. That's easy. If you want to have readership, okay, that now we're beginning to focus in a little bit. Now you're not just writing for you, you're writing for somebody who's going to read it. If you want to get paid for your writing, that becomes more problematic. It becomes a little more difficult. You have to have a little more idea of where you're going to sell it. How are you going to sell it? Who are you going to sell it to? How will you find them? So, if all you want to do is write, a blog is great. A notebook works great. Word processor is terrific. If you want somebody to read it, then how are you going to make it available for people to read? If you don't really care about getting paid, Royal Road, Wattpad, Archive of Our Own, all of those places give you the opportunity to put books. A blog would do it. You could get a WordPress blog for free and throw it up on WordPress, and maybe somebody will read it, maybe somebody won't. If you don't care, that's fine.
You've actually reminded me of the local restaurant. We have a local cafe, bar, mercado, and it's confusing because in a sense, it's almost like somebody said, I want to sell things, but they haven't actually defined an identity for their restaurant business. And so we're all confused about why it is we would go there. Like literally, we don't know if we're there to buy coffee or to eat like a fancy French inspired meal, or whether it's, there just to buy some tapas for the home table. If I don't know why I think I'm food oriented, but this makes more, as you described it, I thought, that's kind of it. It's one thing to want to cook meals, but you do want people to appreciate your food, but they're never going to figure out how to find you or what you're doing if you don't focus that. So anyway.
And it's the same with writing. It's the same with writing stories. It's like, wait, why do you pick a niche? Or, oh, I'm not going to pick a niche. I'm going to write whatever I want to write, or I'm going to write this wonderful crossover and blend these genres together, which is one of the common themes I see. Not that often anymore because most people have learned better. It used to be the idea that if I blend these two genres, then I will attract two different audiences. And the reality is just piss off two different audiences. The people who like the one are not going to like having, the chocolate in their peanut butter, and the people who like peanut butter aren't going to like the chocolate with it. So it's not like a Reese's peanut butter cup. That doesn't necessarily translate well. While there will be people who do, that's a subset of both of those. It's not a superset of them combined. So that's where this whole marketing idea comes in. It's where this whole idea of what is it that you want to accomplish at a high level, and then trying to figure out how to put what you want in a place that satisfies your goal. So if your goal is to write, that's easy, right? If your goal is to have a reader, that's a little more difficult, but not impossible, and relatively cheap, like almost free. You still have to have like some way to put it out there, which means an internet connection at its minimum. if you want to get paid for it, that's where things begin to hit the road. That's why I did a recent article about how every artist is a startup business, and if you're going to be an artist and produce work to sell to a public, you're a startup business. And failing to recognize that startup business as part and parcel of the artistic endeavor hamstrings you, hobbles you from the very beginning. It's not that you can't overcome it, because I certainly never intended to become a commercially viable entity. I just wanted to put out some podcasts. And so my initial idea was that I wanted really just to learn how to do podcasting. And so I wrote a novel so that I would have something to podcast.
Mhm.
And then it took off from there, and I discovered that there were people who wanted to read my words in their own brain and not have me speak them in their ears, and had to follow down a path that was slightly different. And I thought that was be an interesting path, so I followed it. So it's not like your initial marketing plan has to be the original, has to be the be all end all, cast it in concrete, tie it around your neck with a chain and start waiting. You can change it as you go. In fact, it's ideal if you do. That's sort of the point of marketing, is to periodically you take a survey and say, is this still what I want to do? Is this where I want to be? Is this accomplishing a goal that is still valid, or has my goal shifted, and therefore do I have to change what it is that I'm doing?
Yeah.
And that's marketing.
I love it. So I know you mentioned that we had kind of that little sidebar about how people hopefully have learned not to mix genres lately. This has been a kind of an interesting year. I was noting that Kindle Vella had actually shut down their platform, and then we've seen some movement on serial publishing front with platforms such as Letterpress springing up. But I was curious about what your thoughts are about, Amazon as a platform, for example.
Serials are tough. I started with serial podcast. But the truth about serials is they're only serial while you're producing. After that, they become binge. So serial is, and so many people have been burned by serial that they wait until it's over before they start it, which sort of bleeds in on itself, because an author starts and then they don't get any pickup, and so they drop it, and then the readers who came along with it are now burned, and they are going to be less likely to take on a serial in the future. Amazon as a viable market is still, as far as I can tell, and I have a very limited view going on this. I have a very limited view window to look through, because I am all in with Amazon, have no intent of getting off, for two reasons. One, first, still at least 65 out of every 100 fiction novels sold in the United States is sold on Amazon. 65 out of 100. That means every other market, Kobo, Barnes and Noble, Nook, independent publishers, Draft to Digital, all of them in total are only 45. So you're going to get onesie twosie on a whole bunch of markets. And then you have to have the overhead of maintaining those markets and keeping track of them. And that level of attention is more than I can deal with while I'm trying to write or publish or get dressed. So it's like I have very limited capacity, and I try to focus the capacity where it can get the most leverage, because it's just me, just the one-man band. One of my tactics in pursuit of my strategy is to go all in with Amazon in order to minimize distraction from other outlets. And so for me, Amazon is the choice because it satisfies my goals and strategies. It's a good tactic. It's extreme. It's still the most viable market, the most viable single market in the U.S. at the moment. And because of Kindle Unlimited, I have a huge fan base on Kindle Unlimited who rely on that for their regular reading. And I refuse to abandon them by going wide for the opportunity to do the onesie twosie on all of those other marketplaces and distract me. So I have this sort of two-part reason for staying with Amazon. It's not that Amazon is my friend or that Amazon is not evil, or maybe it is evil, or maybe I don't know, or it's not something that I'm doing by default. It's a specific decision that I have made and periodically revisit and see no reason to shift from it at the moment.
I think that really highlights, I think it's easy to get caught up in analysis paralysis, right? Because when you talk about marketing, and it does seem like a lot, it's almost like a define the who you are concept, right? Of what you're writing and where if it's Italian food or not. I'm never going to get away from the food, but what I just really want to underscore here is that part you mentioned where you can revisit your decisions, right? It's not as if you pick something and you watch out for any kind of lock-in you have on your content. Obviously, you should do that, but the platforms do shift slightly. So again, it's okay to change. It's okay to change your mind.
It's actually sort of required to at least periodically check in to see if you still think the same way.
And that whole I mean, a lot of new authors here, you got to go wide, and then they see all the pieces that they have to implement to actually accomplish that, for the spare pickings that you mentioned, Nathan. And then they're ripe for the many scams that come along and say, oh yeah, we'll manage all that and we'll make sure you're a bestseller list and we'll handle the distribution for it. It really causes a lot of collateral damage for new authors that unfortunately get involved in one of those kind of scammy organizations.
And again, it comes back to the foundation of what do you want to do? What's your goal? And most people just don't quite take it beyond. I want to be a rich author and not have to worry about working anymore.
It's still work. This is actually part of like a business maturity, right? Because even if you view it as, for example, I have a friend who sells like candles and body scrub at the market. And there's still this moment where you start out, maybe you sell 10 different fragrances, but eventually you realize that the overhead of producing that much different fragrance to product, and you start cutting down and refining till you have your best sellers, until you can understand, in terms of effort per result, which products are the ones you actually want to invest in. And I think that's a natural, no, I don't know if anything is natural in this kind of marketing discussion, but a normal and necessary part of maturity is necking down. Yes. Okay. So I know the last thing I wanted to ask about, though, of course, all topics are on the table, is you definitely mentioned something, I think, about like the limits of one's capability or having enough energy to invest or trying to choose how to spend your time. So I know as authors, we all have lives and we all have life events. So I feel like, recently it sounds like you've also had some life events that maybe have made you consider how you might want to change your approach to authorship. And I was interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah, in 2022, I lost the year to cancer. I had a lesion on the back of my tongue and had chemo and radiation and survived the treatment. I was mostly sick, recovering. It was 6 months before I was able to get off the couch after the treatments ended. And so getting back writing practice back together was like the drive to do it kind of pushed me through, and I was really looking forward to getting back in it. I had 3 novels that I'd already drafted. I had a 4th novel that had a beginning and no middle, no end. It was just sort of at a beginning, and I was really looking forward to getting back into that when I could finally shovel off the chemo fog and all of the brain fog and all of the distraction of I'm going to die. And get back into something that approached a more normal lifestyle that didn't involve sitting 3 times a day on a feeding tube, or every 5 days a week on a chemo pump or whatever. And so it was kind of a challenge for me to come back from that, to see, all right, what do I do? And to focus on, all right, what can I do now that I couldn't do before, rather than what can't I do now? So like I have almost no taste buds right now. It's a cruel irony that a foodie should lose his taste buds, but
No, I'm sorry.
So how did it change my writing? I became way too. I've struggled for a couple of years now. So this is 2025. I'm trying to get back to the doing it for fun and for less pretentious, less conscious of what it is that I'm trying to do, other than try to tell a story, to have some fun while I'm writing, and to do it on a regular basis, as opposed to, do I have energy to do it today? Do I not have energy to do it today? And do I just want to read a book, or am I going to play a video game, or am I going to do something else? And so it's been a struggle. It's been one day after another, and I'm not 100% convinced that I'm not 100% convinced that it's working, but it never. I don't think I ever was 100% convinced, and the challenge is I'm just more aware of it now. It's
Well, Nathan,
it does focus one. I'll tell you that.
I see your poems, Nathan. So they come out occasionally. They're awesome, and that you let people enjoy in the social networks. So you are doing things that are being enjoyed. I know that, and we're very happy, of course, that you're here with us, and we know your readers are as well. And I know you have lots of readers, and that's an encouraging note, because I've always said maybe I'm a downer. I try not to be, but the author, especially the new author, but I think any author, even if you're established, it's not an easy line of work. It's a lot of work, and the motivation factors, even if you don't have major life occurrences happening, can be a big challenge. So I find it encouraging to hear your stories, and you are marching on as an author, and even if it's getting the poetry out. I mean, that's what we do. We make things for people to enjoy, and you're still doing that. So
One a day, whether I want to or not.
Yes, it's like a tip for working through writer's block. I don't say a couple of things. One was this, though, right? It's the practice. You got to keep the practice.
That's
Exactly.
my word of the year, practice.
And the other thing I remembered was when you were talking, Nathan, I don't know if you read Ubik by Philip K. Dick, or if you read Philip K. Dick's. Yeah. So I read Ubik once, and the thing about Ubik is, besides it's critically acclaimed, I had trouble reading it. Like the first few pages I thought were just like amazing, and then after that I was like, oh, where is this story going? I read up on it, and apparently he had the worst writer's block. He got the first 12 pages out, and then everything after that was a struggle.
Yeah, this book was never, the one I'm working on now was never supposed to be. The Wizard's Butler took off when it dropped, and I really think that it was because of Tom Taylorson's audiobook that Podium put out. And he has a huge audience, and they found it. And so I get more requests now for the sequel to The Wizard's Butler, which will be The Wizard's Cat. Say that right now. Than I do for the more science fiction. And science fiction, the Ishmael Wong and the Golden Age of the Solar Clipper has always been the bread and butter, but The Wizard's Butler took off, and now I have to write a sequel to a book that was supposed to be a standalone.
Oh,
And
wow.
not just because it took off with the fans, but it also took off with me. It was like, this is a really interesting idea of a guy working as a wizard's butler who doesn't have magic of his own. And so how does that color what he does and how he sees the world if he knows that this thing that he can't see or hear or do is actually something that he has to work with, and he has to work in that environment, and how does he do it? And so it's sort of taken on a life of its own for me. So this Wizard's Cat thing, I think I wrote 30,000 words before I got sick. And then I have had 5 or 6 starts and written something over 500,000 words, trying to find 100,000 of them that'll work together. It's been an interesting challenge, and I think I'm finally on the track, but it's like trying to do it every day isn't necessarily the right answer. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but just keep at it is about the best advice I can give anybody. Keep at it as long as you want to. If you have to, that becomes a different problem.
Well, I snuck over to check out the reviews for your book, and what's interesting is how many people seem to comment on how unusual they find it for the genre. I see it's classified as fantasy mystery, and or at least at some level, whether you wanted it to be or not. And it's funny because some people are like, this is the coziest book, and I'm like, I don't normally see people like talk about it like that. It's wild, but I keep seeing unusual pop up, which is kind of a neat. I feel like your readers found this one to be a little different. I don't know.
And again, it goes back to marketing.
Mhm.
One of the discussions I had with myself was, all right, if I'm going to write science fiction, I have to face some realities. And the first is, I can't out-Weber David Weber.
Mm.
I'm not going to outright any of the people who are the lights of that genre, that niche. I'm not going to be able to do what they do better. So what do I do instead? And that goes back to a concept in marketing called product differentiation. Like I can't beat them at that game. So what game do I want to play that I can do that they don't? And so the Wizard's Butler is to get into that fantasy contemporary niche and not fall into the same urban fantasy slog that is really dominating that particular small area of fantasy.
Yes.
And so being able to, and the problem with that is that you have to read a whole lot to find out where the holes are, so that you can work in the holes to put out a book that satisfies the niche, but is not the same as everything else that's there. And once you do that, that's your way into finding readers who want to read what you want to write.
Yeah. I feel like I love this discussion. It's made marketing feel a lot more approachable to me because, like, how some people fear the word networking in terms of getting out there and shaking hands, I think marketing can potentially have that same kind of fearful connotation. But when we break it down like this, I feel it's a lot more approachable. It makes a lot more sense and why you would want to engage in it. Steaphan, do you have any other questions or anything you think we should touch on?
Questions, but I just wanted to say that was another great point you made, Nathan, which when we're talking about, motivation and such, you said that, that you're not going to be X author or Y author. You're going to be you when you're writing. And I think that, I know with me, it's a blocker sometimes because I write and then I read a lot and I was like, I read other people's things and like, why don't I write like that? And everything. If I could just write like that. But you can't, I think the moral of this story is you can't let that stop you. You just can't. And I don't know, I'm not going to do the metaphors as well as you did. I love the horse running on gasoline one, but all I can say is, people buy, I guess, I don't know if you remember the Yugos from the 1980s, the late 80s. There's people that were in that market to buy a Yugo, and there's people in the market to buy a Mercedes or a Lamborghini. And there will be people in the market to buy our books. I mean, assuming that we at least do due diligence of putting something reasonably of quality, but not being the Lamborghini.
You mean you have to define what your book is? That's the difference between I just want to write and getting into the next steps of things. Sorry, please continue.
No, that was it. I just thought that was a good point, is don't let trying to be like others or as good as others or, stop you. Just be you, do the best you can do, get the books out there. And I know last time you spoke, you said you got to have 5+ of them. So, to really start feeling momentum going. So
Yeah, that's a big sticker for a lot of people. It's like it's not one and done. I had a colleague, a friend, wanted to know. It's like, well, he wants to get out of video. He's thinking maybe getting into writing and doing self-publishing. And what does it really involve? And I said, well, if you want to do it, it's like write a throwaway. And he's like, what? It's like, write a book, just anything, write a book, go through the process and get it up to the point where you're going to hit publish, and maybe hit publish or maybe don't. But then you'll know what the process is. And you only write 20,000 words or something, and then go through the process and put it up and see what it's like. And it's because it's all mechanics. There's nothing magic about it. It's just mechanics. Once you have the final draft, it's just mechanics. And he was like, I'm going to write a novel, and just what? Throw it away? Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, your first book probably is going to be throwaway, like mine was. And luckily, somebody else picked that up off the curb. So, knowing that you're going to not be able to just spend the next 5 years writing your opus and expect that that's going to be the thing is helpful. I'm not sure a lot of people really believe it, but if you're not willing to be in it for the long haul, then novel writing may not be the right path for your writing, particularly if you want to get paid for it. If again, writing is easy, publishing is easy, getting paid, that's hard.
I think that's probably a good summary of the entire podcast today. Are there any other words of wisdom you'd like to share, Nathan, as we wrap up?
Keep going. As long as you want, keep going. When it comes to be more of a struggle than it is a joy, then quit.
All right. We'll have to check in with you next year again and see if that's updated.
Yeah. At my age, if you can check in with me next year, that's a good sign.
You have it, sir. Steaphan, anything you want to wrap up with?
No, I just want to say thank you, Nathan, again for joining us and giving us this update, and probably would hope to get you on again before a year elapses. It's just, as you said earlier, life just comes by quickly, but we'd like to have you more often.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll put Nate's details in his bio link and the show notes. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye.